My parents married me to a billionaire dog in exchange for millions. My name is Amelia and I am just 16 years old, but in all these 16 years of my existence I have never been loved. I am the last born of 3 daughters. My parents had desperately wanted a male child, so when I was born a girl they resented me. Their hatred was so deep that I became nothing more than a slave in my own home. While my family dined at the table, I sat in the backyard eating from broken plates and drinking from a leaking cup. I was the only child who never went to school, church, or even family gatherings. In fact, only a few close relatives knew I existed because my parents kept me hidden from the world. My sisters treated me worse than a pest, and over time I became numb to their cruelty. I had accepted my fate until the unimaginable happened. One day, my immediate older sister, Jacinta, fell gravely ill. My parents spent almost all their money, but her condition only worsened. The doctors said she needed a heart transplant, and the cost was beyond anything my family could afford. Then, one evening, my father sat in the living room, devastated, watching the news, when a shocking headline flashed across the screen. A wealthy man was offering a huge sum of money in exchange for a young girl to marry his dog. And that was the moment my nightmare truly began. At first I thought it was a joke. Who in their right mind would marry a dog? But when I saw the way my father's eyes lit up, I knew it wasn't a joke to him. That night, my parents whispered in their room for hours. The next morning they called me in. My mother's voice was softer than usual, almost sweet. "Amelia," she said, forcing a smile, "would you like to do something that will make us proud?" I didn't answer. I knew better than to trust her kindness. My father didn't bother pretending. "You are getting married," he announced, "and we will finally have enough money to save your sister's life." I was confused. Married? To whom? No man had ever looked at me twice, and my parents never let me out of the house. Then my mother said it. "To a dog." I laughed. A dry, bitter laugh. Surely they were joking. Surely even they wouldn't stoop this low. But their faces were serious. My father clenched his jaw, already irritated by my reaction. "You should be grateful," he snapped. "You will finally be useful for something." Tears burned my eyes, but I didn't dare let them fall. "I'm not an animal," I whispered. My mother scoffed. "And yet you eat outside like one." I felt like I couldn't breathe. My heart pounded in my chest as the walls of the tiny room closed in on me. My whole life they had treated me like I was nothing, and now they were selling me like an object. "No," I said, shaking my head. "I won't do it." Before I could react, my father's hand flew across my face. The slap was so hard I fell to the ground, my cheek burning. "You don't have a choice," he growled. I wanted to run, to scream, to beg, but I knew it was useless. No one would help me. That was the night they sold me. 2 days later, a black SUV arrived in front of our house. A tall, well-dressed man stepped out. He didn't even look at me as he handed my father a briefcase. And just like that, I was gone. The moment I was shoved into the back seat of that sleek black SUV, I knew my fate was sealed. The man who had come to get me barely spoke a word. He simply gestured for me to get in, his expression cold and unreadable. As we drove away, I glanced back at the house I had called home, hoping, praying that someone, anyone, would run after the car and stop this madness. But my parents stood by the doorway, counting the money, their faces filled with satisfaction. I couldn't try escaping last night because my dad locked me up in the storeroom with heavy padlocks. I was only set free immediately the black SUV arrived to take me. Tears streamed down my face, but I bit my lip to keep from sobbing. Crying wouldn't change anything. The ride was long, stretching into hours. I had no idea where we were going, and I was too afraid to ask. The man beside me, who I assumed was the driver's boss, finally broke the silence. "You will follow the rules," he said, his voice deep and commanding. "Do not question, do not resist." I stared at him, my body trembling. "Please," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I'm a human being." He didn't even blink. "You are what we say you are." My stomach twisted into knots. What kind of place was I being taken to? Eventually we arrived at a massive mansion, its golden gates swinging open automatically as we approached. The place was breathtaking, more luxurious than anything I had ever seen. But instead of admiration, all I felt was dread. As the car rolled to a stop, 2 guards stepped forward and pulled me out before I could even process what was happening. They led me through a grand hallway, my bare feet sinking into the plush carpet. Everything smelled expensive. Fresh flowers, polished wood, wealth. And then I saw him. Sitting on a velvet cushion in the center of the massive living room was the dog. A huge, white-furred beast with piercing blue eyes. It looked well-groomed, its collar encrusted with diamonds. It exuded an eerie sense of power, as if it knew exactly what was happening. The man who had brought me here walked forward and bowed slightly before the dog. "Master, your bride has arrived." I felt the world spin beneath me. Bride? To this? Animal? Before I could scream, someone grabbed me from behind, their grip like iron. A cloth was pressed over my mouth, and the sharp scent of chemicals filled my nose. Darkness swallowed me whole. The man who had brought me here walked forward and bowed slightly before the dog. "Master, your bride has arrived." I felt the world spin beneath me. Bride? To this? Animal? Before I could scream, someone grabbed me from behind, their grip like iron. A cloth was pressed over my mouth, and the sharp scent of chemicals filled my nose. Darkness swallowed me whole. When I woke up, my head was pounding and my body felt heavy. My arms and legs were free, but the softness beneath me told me I was lying on a luxurious bed. The air smelled of roses and something expensive, perfume or maybe... I sat up too quickly, dizziness washing over me. My vision blurred for a moment before clearing, revealing an enormous bedroom. The walls were lined with gold-trimmed mirrors, the ceiling high and decorated with a chandelier that shimmered like stars. But none of that mattered, because at the foot of the bed, staring at me with those chilling blue eyes, was the dog. I scrambled back, pressing myself against the headboard. My heart slammed against my ribs as fear gripped me. The dog didn't move. It just watched me, its gaze unsettlingly intelligent, almost human. The door creaked open, and a woman in a maid's uniform stepped in. She looked young, maybe in her early 20s, with sharp features and a cold expression. She carried a tray of food and set it on the bedside table. "You will eat," she said, her tone flat. I shook my head. "I want to go home." She scoffed. "You no longer have a home." Tears welled in my eyes, but I blinked them back. "Please," I whispered, "this isn't right." The maid's expression didn't change. "Eat," she repeated. "The master dislikes weakness." "The master?" I glanced at the dog. My stomach turned. "Who is the master?" I asked, my voice shaking. The maid smirked but didn't answer. Instead, she turned on her heel and walked out, locking the door behind her. I was trapped. I looked back at the dog, my skin crawling. My entire body trembled as I whispered the question I was most afraid to ask. What do they want from me? And to my horror, the dog smiled. I froze. My breath hitched in my throat as I watched the dog's lips pull back in a way that was disturbingly human. My skin prickled with fear. Dogs don't smile. I forced myself to look away, my mind racing. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe the fear and exhaustion were making me see things that weren't real. I needed to get out of here. Slowly, I slid off the bed, my bare feet sinking into the soft rug. The dog didn't move, but I could feel its gaze burning into me. I ignored it and tiptoed to the door, pressing my ear against the wood. Silence. I reached for the handle, praying it wasn't locked, but the second my fingers brushed against the metal, click, a low growl rumbled behind me. My body stiffened. Slowly I turned my head. The dog was standing now, its piercing blue eyes locked onto mine. Its head was tilted slightly, as if amused. Then it spoke. "You won't leave." A scream clawed its way up my throat, but no sound came out. My knees buckled and I crashed to the floor. Dogs don't talk. Dogs don't talk. But this one just had. I shook my head violently, trying to wake up from whatever nightmare this was. My chest rose and fell in rapid, shallow breaths as I scrambled backward. "No, this isn't real," I whispered. The dog, or the thing, tilted its head further, its grin widening. "You belong to me now." Tears burned my eyes. "What are you?" The air in the room grew heavy, suffocating. The chandelier above flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Then, right before my eyes, the dog began to change. Its fur darkened, its body stretching, twisting into something grotesquely human. Bones cracked, limbs lengthened, and within seconds the creature before me was no longer a dog, but a man. A tall, striking man with sharp features, glowing blue eyes, and a wicked smile. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. He took a step forward, his presence suffocating. "Now," he murmured, his voice deep and smooth, "shall we begin our honeymoon?" Darkness swam in my vision, and then I fainted. When I woke up again, I was no longer in the lavish bedroom. The air around me was damp and cold. The scent of roses had been replaced with something musty, like old wood and stone. My body ached, and my hands trembled as I pushed myself upright. I was in a dimly lit room. The walls were made of dark bricks, and there was a single candle flickering on a nearby table. A heavy wooden door stood at the far end, locked from the outside. Panic surged through me. What was this place? Where had they taken me? I tried to remember what had happened before I blacked out. The talking dog, the transformation, the man with the glowing blue eyes. Had I lost my mind? A deep, familiar voice pulled me from my thoughts. "You fainted," it said smoothly. I spun around so fast I nearly fell. He was there, the man who had once been a dog. He leaned against the wall, watching me with that same unnerving smile. His dark hair was slightly tousled, and he was dressed in an elegant black suit, looking every bit like a nobleman. But his eyes, those unnatural, glowing blue eyes. I pressed myself against the cold bricks, my heart pounding. "What are you?" I rasped. His smile widened. "Your husband." My stomach churned. "No," I breathed. This isn't real. This can't be real." He chuckled. "You'll find that reality is much stranger than you think, little bride." Tears welled in my eyes. "Please, just let me go." His expression darkened, the amusement fading. He took slow, deliberate steps toward me until he was close enough that I could feel the unnatural chill radiating from his body. "You were sold to me," he murmured. "You belong to me now." I shook my head violently. "I am not an object. I don't belong to anyone." He reached out and traced a finger along my cheek. His touch was cold, too cold. I flinched, But he didn't let me move away. Humans, he mused, always so eager to believe they have a choice. His hand dropped to his side as he stepped back, watching me with something unreadable in his gaze. You will learn soon enough. Then, without another word, he turned and walked toward the door. With a snap of his fingers, it creaked open on its own. He glanced over his shoulder. "Rest well, wife. Tomorrow your training begins." The door slammed shut behind him, plunging me into darkness. The hours crawled by, each second stretching into eternity. My plan was simple. The next time the door opened, I would run. I didn't care where. I didn't care if I died trying. Anything was better than being trapped with that thing. My heart pounded as I sat on the edge of the bed, my muscles tense, ready to spring. Then, click. The door creaked open. I didn't think so. I bolted. My feet slammed against the cold stone floor as I raced past the maid who had entered, shoving her aside. She yelped in surprise, but I didn't stop. I sprinted through a dimly lit hallway, my eyes darting wildly for an exit. The mansion was a maze. High walls, golden chandeliers, endless corridors that twisted and turned. But I didn't stop running. Then, just when I thought I saw a large set of doors ahead, possibly the exit, a shadow moved. Before I could react, he was in front of me. The man, the monster, my supposed husband. He hadn't run, hadn't chased me. He had simply appeared. I skidded to a stop, my chest rising and falling rapidly. He stood there, calm, his piercing blue eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. He tilted his head, studying me like I was some amusing little creature. "Going somewhere, wife?" His voice was smooth, eerily unbothered. I didn't answer. My body screamed at me to run, but my legs refused to move. I had made a mistake, a terrible, terrible mistake. Then he took a step forward, and another. I backed away, my throat dry, my heart hammering so loudly it felt like it would burst. "I won't stay here," I choked out. "I'd rather die." His expression didn't change. If anything, the corners of his lips twitched upward, like he was entertained. "Is that so?" In a blur, he moved. Too fast. Impossible. Before I could even blink, he was behind me. A cold hand gripped my wrist, and a chilling whisper brushed against my ear. "Then let me show you what happens when you disobey me." The darkness didn't last long. I felt my body being dragged. Not by hands, but by something else. A force. A presence. My limbs were weightless, my mind spinning. When I finally crashed onto a hard surface, my lungs gasped for air, my body shivering from the cold. I blinked rapidly, trying to adjust to my surroundings. I was no longer in the grand mansion. I was somewhere else, somewhere worse. The air was thick, humid, and filled with the sound of distant howls. The sky above me was wrung a swirling mass of black and violet, with no stars, no moon. Strange glowing symbols flickered in the distance like fireflies. I tried to stand, but the ground beneath me was damp and uneven, like soil, but not quite. It pulsed beneath my fingers, as if alive. A deep growl rumbled behind me. My breath hitched. Slowly I turned my head. There he was. But he was no longer a man. He stood on 4 legs now, his massive white fur shimmering under the eerie sky. His blue eyes glowed with something ancient, something wrong. He wasn't just a dog. He was a beast, far larger than any animal I had ever seen. And when he spoke, his voice was distorted, layered, as if many voices spoke through him at once. "You think you can run from me?" I trembled, my heart slamming against my ribs. His form flickered. 1 second he was the beast, towering over me, sharp teeth glinting. The next, he was a man again, crouching in front of me, his elegant black suit perfectly in place, as if nothing had changed, except his eyes. They remained inhuman. "You belong to me, Amelia." His voice was softer now, but no less terrifying. "I will teach you that." Tears pricked my eyes. "Please," I whispered, "please let me go." His lips curled upward in something that wasn't quite a smile. "I am letting you go." Before I could react, the ground beneath me split open. A terrible force pulled me down, swallowing me whole as the beast watched, its glowing eyes never blinking. And then I woke up. Gasping, screaming, I was back in the mansion, lying in the same bed as if I had never left. But the sheets were covered in dirt, and at the foot of the bed, watching me with eerie amusement, was the beast. Still in his dog form, still smiling, and with that, the world vanished. Darkness swallowed me whole. Was I actually dreaming all along? I thought about staring at the dog. Just then, the door swung open, and the man who had brought me to the house earlier stepped into the room. He bowed deeply to the dog. Without a sound, the beast turned and padded out of the room, disappearing into the shadows. The man straightened and turned to me. "I know you're scared," he said at last, his voice calm yet firm. I sat frozen on the bed, my heart still racing. "But I assure you," he continued, "if you love him unconditionally and he becomes a stable human, you will be rewarded abundantly. Then the choice will be yours, whether to stay with him or not." His gaze darkened slightly. "But there are certain rules you must follow." I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "Rules?" The man took a step closer, his expression unreadable. "Break them, and there will be consequences." I clenched my fists. What are the rules?" He studied me for a moment, as if deciding whether I was even worthy of knowing. Then he spoke. "First, you must never attempt to leave this house again." My chest tightened. "Second, you must never reject him." I shuddered at the thought. "Third, you must never, under any circumstances, look at him when he is changing." My breath caught. Changing. The man's gaze darkened. "If you break these rules, you won't have to worry about choosing whether to stay or leave, because you won't be alive to make that choice." A cold chill ran down my spine. I wanted to scream, to argue, to demand answers, but I couldn't, because deep down I knew this wasn't a warning. It was a promise. Silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. My fingers twisted the sheets beneath me, my pulse hammering in my ears. I wanted to ask why. Why me? Why these rules? What would happen if I broke them? But I already knew the answer. I wouldn't survive it. The man sighed, his sharp gaze softening just slightly. "You may think of this as a prison," he said, "but it doesn't have to be. If you obey, if you earn his favor, life here will be bearable. Bearable. Not good, not free, just bearable." A lump formed in my throat, but I forced myself to nod. What else could I do? Satisfied, he turned toward the door. "Rest now. He will expect you at dinner." He didn't wait for me to respond. The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving me, Amelia, with my thoughts. My body trembled as I stared at the room around me. It was luxurious, far better than anything I'd ever had at home, but it felt like a beautifully decorated cage. But anyways, it's much more preferable than my own family. I wasn't free. I had been claimed, and tonight at dinner I would have to face him again. That thought settled deep inside me. Maybe if I did what they asked, if I loved him unconditionally, if I followed the rules, he would be free. And maybe, just maybe, I would be free too. The idea clung to me like a fragile thread of hope. If there was even the slightest chance that this nightmare had an ending, then I had to try. But could I really love a monster? I clenched my fists. I had to, because if setting him free was my only way out, then I would do whatever it took. Even if it meant losing myself in the process. That night the mansion felt even colder. A maid arrived at my room, silent and efficient, laying out a dress for me. It was deep red, smooth as silk, and far too elegant for someone like me. "You must wear this," she said softly, avoiding my gaze. I hesitated. "What happens if I don't?" She flinched, actually flinched. I got my answer. Wordlessly, I slipped into the dress. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made just for me. The maid led me down endless corridors, each step heavier than the last. By the time we reached the dining hall, my heart was pounding so hard I thought I might collapse. The room was grand. Massive chandeliers, velvet drapes, a long table set with silverware that gleamed under the candlelight, but I barely noticed any of it, because at the far end of the table he was waiting. He wasn't in his beast form now. He looked human. Or at least close enough. His white hair was neatly combed, his sharp features unreadable, but those glowing blue eyes, they were the same. The same ones that had haunted my nightmares last night. Slowly he stood. "Come," he said. His voice sent a shiver down my spine. I forced my feet to move, each step feeling like I was walking toward my own doom. As I reached the table, he pulled out the chair beside him. "Sit." I hesitated. His eyes darkened slightly, not in anger, in amusement. "You don't trust me." It wasn't a question. I swallowed. Should I? Something flickered in his gaze. Then, to my surprise, he laughed. A deep, smooth sound that sent an unsettling chill through me. "I suppose not." I sat, my hands clenched into fists in my lap. A long, tense silence stretched between us before he finally spoke again. "You fear me," he said, tilting his head. "That's good," I frowned. "Why?" His lips curled into the faintest of smirks. "Because fear is the first step toward understanding." I stiffened at his words. Understanding? What was there to understand about a monster? He reached for his glass, swirling the dark liquid inside before taking a slow sip. His every movement was calculated, controlled, like a predator observing its prey. "You think I'm cruel," he mused, setting the glass down. "That I've taken you against your will." I clenched my fists beneath the table. "Because you did." His smirk deepened. "And yet, here you are, wearing the dress I provided, sitting at my table, listening to my words." I swallowed hard. He was playing with me, twisting my reality like a cat toying with a trapped mouse. "I don't have a choice," I muttered. He leaned forward slightly, his glowing blue eyes piercing through me. "Don't you?" The weight of his gaze made my breath hitch. I wanted to look away, to escape this conversation, but I couldn't. Something about him, about the way he spoke, the way he studied me, kept me frozen in place. He exhaled slowly. "You will have a choice, Amelia." I flinched at the sound of my name coming from his lips. He noticed. His expression flickered, just for a second, into something unreadable. Then it was gone. "When the time comes," he continued, voice softer now, "you will decide. Not just for me, but for yourself. I swallowed the lump in my throat, and if I choose to leave, a slow, knowing smile spread across his lip. Then you will have to set me free first. The air in the room seemed to shift, like an unseen force pressing against my skin. My heartbeat quickened. This was it. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the possibility of freedom. But something about the way he said it sent a cold dread curling around my spine. "What does that mean?" I asked hesitantly. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he lifted his glass again, taking another slow sip. Then, setting it down, he finally spoke. "It means," he said, his voice like silk, "that you have to love me first. But before then, you have to eat," he said, pushing a bowl of fried chicken toward me while filling my tumbler with chilled fruit juice straight from the jug. I sat there, lost in thought, staring at nothing as his words echoed in my mind. "Eat, wifey. If people see you sitting awkwardly, they'll think I'm not a good husband," he teased with a chuckle. His voice pulled me back to reality. I hesitated, then picked up the fork and spoon, slowly beginning to eat. The whole time, he watched me. His piercing blue eyes never wavered, making my skin prickle with unease. The way he sat, calm, composed, and undeniably handsome, only made it worse. I wanted to ask why he wasn't eating, why he was just watching me, but I held my tongue. I had been instructed not to question him. Instead, I focused on my meal, pretending not to notice how he kept refilling my cup with water and juice, as if making sure I had everything I needed, and still, those glowing blue eyes stayed locked on me. After I finished eating, he stood up and stretched out a hand toward me. "Come," he said, his voice smooth and commanding. I hesitated for a moment before placing my hand in his. His grip was firm but gentle as he led me through the grand halls of the mansion. The air outside was crisp, the night sky glittering with stars as we approached a sleek black car waiting in the driveway. To my surprise, he walked ahead and opened the door for me. "After you, my lady," he murmured with a playful smirk. I blinked in surprise but stepped in, sinking into the plush leather seat. He rounded the car and slid into the driver's seat beside me, the engine humming softly as he pulled onto the winding road. The ride was quiet, yet oddly comfortable. I found myself sneaking glances at him, his sharp jawline, the way his silver hair flowed under the moonlight, and those ever-watchful blue eyes. After a short drive, we arrived at a breathtaking garden. It was unlike anything I had ever seen. Rows of vibrant flowers stretched endlessly, their petals shimmering under the soft glow of lanterns. A cool breeze carried the delicate fragrance of roses and jasmine, wrapping around me like a warm embrace. I stepped out of the car, inhaling deeply. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt at peace. A soft smile tugged at my lips as I wandered through the garden, brushing my fingers against the velvety petals, the colours, the scents, the quiet rustling of leaves. It was all so beautiful. I turned slightly and saw him seated on a wooden bench beneath a large blossoming tree. His posture was relaxed, one arm draped over the back of the bench, yet his gaze never left me. It was as if his eyes were protecting me, watching over me like a silent guardian. The way he looked at me wasn't like the cold stares I was used to. It wasn't cruel, nor was it demanding. It was something else entirely. For the first time in a long time, I felt safe. But just then, something happened. Someone grabbed my arm roughly from behind, yanking me backward. My heart pounded as I spun around, my breath hitching. Even though it was still early in the evening, the garden was nearly empty. A sudden wave of confusion washed over me. Who here would even know me? I turned nervously, only to come face to face with Krista. Her dark eyes burned with fury as she glared at me. "What are you doing here, huh?" she snapped, her voice dripping with venom. Krista had never once treated me like a human being, let Amelia a sister. Every moment in our parents' house had been a reminder of how much she despised me. Whenever it was her turn to give me food, she would soak it in water or overload it with pepper, filling my cup with dirty water just to watch me suffer. And now she was standing before me, her hatred as strong as ever. "Why are you just standing there staring at me, huh?" she sneered. "I see how money-hungry you've become, leaving your dog husband at home." I stiffened, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. All my life I had been trained to stay silent. No matter how much they hurt me, I was never allowed to talk back. But not this time. A tall man strolled toward us, his eyes gleaming with interest. "Is this the slave sister you told me about?" he asked, smirking. "Yes, honey," Krista cooed, wrapping her arm around his. Pathetic, isn't it? A worthless gold digger who couldn't even stand the sight of her animal husband. I bet she's in this garden looking for some handsome guy to entertain her, since her beast of a husband can't satisfy her. She laughed cruelly, but my patience had reached its breaking point. "I can tolerate every vile thing you say about me," I said, my voice steady, "but do not bring my husband into this. He may be cursed, but I chose to stay by his side, and I will not let you insult him." Krista's eyes flashed with rage. "How dare you talk back to me?" she hissed, raising her hand to slap me. I braced myself for the impact, my body tensing as I prepared for the familiar sting of pain, but it never came. Just as Krista's hand was about to strike Amelia's cheek, a large manly palm caught her wrist mid-air, twisting it slightly. A sharp gasp of pain escaped Krista's lips as she turned to see who had dared to stop her. Standing tall beside them was a handsome man with piercing blue eyes. Zach, Amelia's husband. Krista's face twisted in pain as Zach's grip tightened slightly around her wrist. Her arrogance wavered for a brief moment as she looked up at him, tall, imposing, and undeniably powerful. His blue eyes, glowing faintly under the garden lights, were cold and unreadable. "I suggest," Zach said, his voice smooth yet deadly, "you lower your hand before you regret it." Krista let out a shaky laugh, trying to mask her discomfort. "And who are you to tell me what to do?" she spat. His expression didn't change. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, his grip still firm. "I am who you aren't worthy of knowing." "So, you have got the guts to cheat on your dog husband, huh? Mum and Daddy are going to hear of this." She uttered. The man beside her, her so-called boyfriend, stepped forward, puffing out his chest. "Husband or not, you shouldn't interfere in family matters," he said smugly. Zach turned his gaze to the man, studying him with a look so calm it was terrifying. Then, in one swift motion, he released Krista's wrist and stepped in front of me. "I wasn't going to interfere if you didn't raise your hand on her," Zach said, slipping a protective arm around my waist. "I was protecting what's mine." Krista's nostrils flared in rage. "Oh, so now you're pretending to care about her. What, is she your new pet now?" Zach's lips twitched, not in anger, but in amusement. "What if she is? And if you touch her again?" He leaned slightly closer, his voice dropping to something dark, dangerous. "You won't have a hand left to raise." Krista took a step back, her confidence faltering. For the first time, she looked afraid. Her boyfriend scoffed. "Come on, babe, let's go. This isn't worth our time." But before leaving, Zach's gaze lingered on me, his blue eyes still smoldering from the confrontation. He took a step closer, his voice lower this time. "I will never let anyone hurt you, Amelia. he said firmly. Not even your own blood. I swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. I wasn't used to being protected. I wasn't used to mattering. A cool breeze brushed past us, rustling the flowers in the garden. Zach's expression softened as he reached for my hand, his touch surprisingly gentle. Come, he said, guiding me toward a wooden bench beneath a tree. Sit with me for a while. I hesitated at first, but eventually sat beside him. The fragrance of fresh flowers filled the air, calming my nerves. I glanced at him from the corner of my eye. He was staring ahead, his posture relaxed, but I could tell he was watching me, protecting me. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, though. It felt safe. Then Zach finally broke the silence. Do you like it here? I blinked, caught off guard by the question. Yes, I admitted quietly. It's beautiful. He nodded as if pleased with my answer. Good. I want you to enjoy moments like this. I looked at him fully this time, studying his features. The glow in his blue eyes had dimmed slightly, making them appear more human. The man before me was still a mystery, a beast trapped in human form, and yet for some reason I felt safer beside him than I ever did in my own home. Zach, I whispered before I could stop myself. He turned his head slightly, his gaze locking onto mine. Yes? I hesitated, my fingers curling into my dress. There was so much I wanted to ask, so much I didn't understand. But instead, I simply said, thank you. For the first time, a real smile curved his lips. And for the first time in my life, I smiled back. Few days later, the days had been peaceful. Aside from the day he took me to the garden, I hadn't set eyes on him. Neither had I seen him anywhere around the mansion. Each time I asked the maids about the boss, they all gave me a pitiful look. Their eyes filled with something they refused to put into words, as if they were scared of breaking devastating news to me. Despite Zach's absence, I was treated with utmost respect, almost like a princess. But that night, as I sat by my window, lost in thought, my door creaked open. Lucas, Zach's right-hand man, stood there, his expression unreadable. Good evening, Mom, he said, his voice calm yet urgent. I'm sorry, but you need to come with me. There's something you must see. A strange chill ran down my spine, but I nodded and silently followed him. He led me through the dimly lit corridors of the mansion, past familiar halls, and into a part of the estate I had never ventured into before. The air grew colder. The scent of rust and something metallic filled my nostrils, making my stomach churn. Finally, Lucas stopped in front of a large iron door. He exhaled before pushing it open. The sight before me stole the breath from my lungs. My heart pounded violently as I took a step forward, my legs trembling. And that was when I realized this was my first true test, my first terrifying mission to save Zach. I saw Zach lying on the cold floor in the corner of the room, not in his human form but fully transformed into a dog. What was most terrifying was the state he was in, bruised, bleeding. Almost every part of his body was covered in deep wounds, as if he had been attacked viciously. His blood pooled beside him, staining the floor. His eyes were tightly shut. His chest rose and fell in shallow, labored breaths. He was panting for air, groaning softly in pain. Panic gripped me. What happened to him? I asked, my voice trembling. He was attacked, Lucas replied with a sigh, his gaze fixed on Zach's wounded form. He's lost too much blood already. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. What can I do to save him? I don't want anything bad to happen to him. The words slipped out before I could stop them. I couldn't believe it. I was beginning to care for him. Lucas exhaled deeply, running a hand through his jet-black hair. The task won't be easy, but you have to prove your loyalty to the boss. This is one of the rare times he needs you the most. I clenched my fists. Tell me already, I urged. Lucas hesitated, then met my eyes. You have to kiss his dog form. That's the only antidote that will stop the bleeding and bring him back to himself. My breath caught in my throat. A kiss! I looked down at Zach, at his wounded, trembling body. His fur was matted with blood, his breaths growing weaker by the second. This wasn't just about saving him. It was about proving something, that I wasn't just here because of some cruel fate, that maybe, just maybe, he meant something to me. I hesitated, my heart hammering. What if it doesn't work? I whispered, my voice barely audible. Lucas's expression darkened. Then he might not make it through the night. The words sent a cold chill through me. I didn't think twice anymore. I knelt beside him, my hands trembling as I reached for his face. His fur was soft despite the wounds, and the warmth of his body against my palm sent an unfamiliar ache through me. I leaned closer, shutting my eyes. And then, with a deep breath, I pressed my lips gently against his muzzle. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a spark. A golden light erupted from where our lips met, spreading across Zach's body like wildfire. His wounds began to heal before my eyes, the bleeding stopping instantly. His limbs twitched, his breaths growing steadier. The air around us grew thick with energy, swirling like a storm. I stumbled back as his body began to shift. The fur receded, claws shrank, muscles stretched, bones cracking into place. And then, there he was, Zach, back in his human form. His shirt was torn, his skin bare in places where his wounds had been just seconds ago. His breathing was still heavy, but he was awake. And his eyes, those piercing blue eyes, were locked onto mine. Slowly, he sat up. I could see the confusion in his gaze, the mix of pain and something else, something deeper. I opened my mouth to say something, but before I could, he reached for me. And in one swift movement, he pulled me into his arms. His shirt was torn, his skin bare in places where his wounds had been just seconds ago. His breathing was still heavy, but he was awake. His arms wrapped around me tightly, his grip firm yet trembling. I could feel the warmth of his skin, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat against my cheek. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I wasn't sure if he was holding me because he needed support or because he didn't want to let go. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he spoke, "You saved me." Something in my chest tightened. I pulled back slightly to look at him. His usually sharp, confident eyes were softer now, filled with something I couldn't quite decipher. "You were dying," I murmured. I couldn't just stand there and watch. "You know, I thought you would be disgusted by kissing a dog." "But you weren't," Zach whispered, his warm breath tickling my ear. "I wasn't. Even if I was, I couldn't just stand there and watch you in so much pain without doing anything," I replied. He pulled me even closer, his grip tightening around me. "Boss, you need to take a bath," Lucas interrupted. Zach sighed, releasing me from his embrace. I helped him stand while Lucas led him away. I returned to my room, showered, and changed into a simple floral gown. Ever since I moved into the mansion, the maids had stocked my closet with clothes in my size, dresses, shoes, and even It still felt strange, being treated like someone who mattered. After getting dressed, I lay on the bed, closing my eyes for just a moment when my small button phone rang. I didn't even need to check. Only one set of people had this number. I sighed, tucking the phone under my pillow, but the ringing persisted. Loud and insistent. Frustrated, I finally picked up. "You're becoming rebellious now, aren't you?" My mother's voice screeched through the speaker. I remained silent. "Are you not the one I'm talking to, huh, Amelia?" she yelled again. I clenched my jaw. "Did you call just to scream in my ear? If so, hang up." Silence. For the first time in my life, I had spoken back to her. She was probably in shock. I had spent my entire existence being trained not to question, not to speak unless spoken to, not to challenge my parents, even when they were wrong. I was always the one taking the blame. "Well, have you called to mock me or what?" I asked, my voice colder than before. "Phew, what audacity!" she spat. "Don't think that just because you're married to that animal, I can't still discipline you." I closed my eyes, bracing myself for whatever nonsense would come next. "Anyway, that aside," she continued, "Krista told me you've been roaming around the city with some other cute guys. Let me warn you, don't do anything stupid to make those dog owners mad enough to ask for their money back. Or else," her voice dropped lower, "I will cut off your tongue and feed it to the owls." I swallowed, gripping the phone tighter. "And another thing," she went on, "we need more money. Jacinta just got home from the hospital and she needs to eat proper food. Ask your dog husband for more." My father's voice echoed in the background. "Or better still, sneak into his treasure room and steal some. I'll send you the account number." I felt something inside me shatter. Tears slid silently down my cheeks. I had always known the truth, but hearing it so plainly, so coldly, still hurts. To my parents, I was nothing but a means to an end. I gripped the phone so tightly that my knuckles turned white. My parents' words rang in my ears, their selfishness like a knife slicing through me. I wiped my tears quickly. I wouldn't let them hear me cry. "I won't do it," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "What did you just say?" my mother asked, her tone sharp with disbelief. "I said I won't do it," I repeated, louder this time. "I'm not your pawn anymore. I won't steal from Zach, and I won't beg him for money either." A stunned silence stretched between us. Then my father's voice boomed in the background. "You ungrateful brat. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? Everything you've done for me?" I laughed bitterly. "You mean selling me? Treating me like an animal, making me feel worthless my entire life? You dare speak to us like this?" my mother hissed. "I dare," I said, my voice shaking but firm, "and this will be the last time you ever call me again." With that, I ended the call. My hands trembled as I dropped the phone onto the bed. My chest rose and fell in uneven breaths. It was done. For the first time in my life, I had defied them. A small part of me felt afraid, but a much larger part of me felt free. I took a deep breath, pushing back the lingering pain, and stood up. I needed to clear my mind. Maybe some fresh air on the balcony would help. As I stepped out into the cool night, I didn't notice the figure standing in the shadows, watching me. Zach. His blue eyes glowed under the moonlight. "How much did you hear?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Enough," he said, stepping closer. His gaze held something unreadable. "Enough to know you finally chose yourself." I swallowed hard, not knowing what to say. Then, to my surprise, he reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. "I'm proud of you," he murmured, and for the first time in my life, I felt warmth, safety, like I wasn't Amelia anymore. His words settled into my heart like a soft blanket. I'm proud of you. No one had ever said that to me before, not genuinely, not without strings attached. For a moment, I forgot about the call, forgot about the pain. I was just a girl standing in front of someone who saw me, really saw me. Thank you, I whispered. Zach leaned against the balcony railing, his eyes on the night sky. You know, he said after a moment, your strength surprises me. You've been through so much, yet you're still standing. I smiled faintly. Maybe I'm just used to pain. He turned to look at me, serious now. Don't ever say that again. You weren't made to endure pain. You were made to shine. I looked down, his words almost too heavy to carry, but beautiful. A gust of wind blew gently, lifting my gown and my hair. I held it down awkwardly, laughing softly. See? Zach said, a grin teasing the corner of his lips. Even the wind agrees. You were made to be free. I chuckled, shaking my head. You're weird. I'm cursed, remember? He winked. Weird comes with the package. We both laughed, and for the first time since I entered this mansion, I didn't feel like a prisoner or a stranger. I felt light. But that peace didn't last long. Zach's face grew serious again as he looked toward the horizon. They'll come for you, he said quietly. Your parents. Maybe others too. This world has a way of trying to reclaim anything beautiful it once rejected. I nodded slowly. Let them come. I'm not the same girl they tossed aside. He looked at me with something deep in his eyes. Admiration, respect, maybe something more. I'll protect you, he said firmly, no matter what. And in that moment, I knew. I wasn't just healing. I was becoming. The following days were peaceful. The maids took their time showing me around the mansion, teaching me how to bake and cook. For once, I felt welcomed. They smiled when I got things wrong and cheered when I got it right. Zach had promised that a private tutor would be coming soon to homeschool me. I could barely contain my excitement. At last, I would learn to read and write. It has always been one of my biggest dreams, but it's been 3 days since I last saw Zach. I wondered where he had gone or what he was doing. Wherever he was, I prayed he was safe. In a hidden kingdom. No one is ever going to love you, Dante sneered. You're nothing but a dog. He circled Zach like a hungry vulture. Don't get too excited about that naive little girl. Once she truly finds out who you are, she'll leave, and you'll cry, again. Zach stood silently, his jaw clenched. This is your last chance, Dante continued. The last girl who can break the curse. If she fails, if you fail, you'll remain in your dog form forever. He leaned in closer, voice like poison. And you know what that means. Dante grinned cruelly. I'll become the next king. You'll be at my command, forever. But don't worry, big brother. I'll give you a few royal privileges. You'll lick my legs every morning, lead the army dogs, sleep at my feet, and of course, eat every grain that falls from the royal table. Zach didn't move. He didn't speak. He wasn't here for Dante. He had come to see his father, the king, about something far more important. And he wouldn't let Dante's words break his focus. Not this time. Zach ignored Dante's taunts, his long coat brushing against the marble floors as he walked past him and into the royal chamber. The guards at the entrance bowed and opened the tall golden doors without a word. The moment he stepped inside, the scent of aged books, incense, and cold power filled his nostrils. The throne room was grand, with vaulted ceilings, glittering chandeliers, and a long carpet that stretched toward the elevated dais where the king sat, regal and silent. His silver crown gleamed under the golden light. His face, though marked with age, still held an air of fierce authority. Zack stopped several feet away and bowed slightly. "Father." The king looked down at him, his expression unreadable. "You shouldn't have come here in your current state," the king said. His voice echoed off the walls, heavy and commanding. "Your strength is unstable. The transformation almost killed you." "I had to come," Zack replied, lifting his eyes. "Time is running out." The king leaned back on his throne. "And has the girl accepted you?" Zack hesitated. "She has begun to care." "Begun," the king raised a brow. "You're gambling with fate, my son. If she fails to love you truly, this curse will seal forever. You will not be given another chance." "I know the risks," Zack said, "but I believe in her." The king studied him in silence, then sighed deeply. "Belief is not enough. You must protect her from what's coming. Dante grows bolder. If she is harmed before the bond is complete, you will lose everything." "I'll protect her," Zack swore, his eyes burning with determination, "no matter what it takes." The king nodded slowly. "Then go. But beware. Dante is already moving against you, and not everyone within the walls of your mansion is loyal." Zack clenched his jaw. "Let him come. I won't lose her." As he turned to leave, the king's voice called out one last time. "Zack," he said, "do not forget, the final trial is near, and love must be proven in the face of betrayal." Zack's heart pounded as he left the chamber. He didn't know what awaited him back at the mansion, but he knew one thing for certain. He wouldn't let anything happen to her. Not Amelia. Not now. Back in Zack's mansion, Amelia was fast asleep, wrapped in the warmth of her soft blanket. Outside, the sky wept. Heavy rain poured down like the heavens were mourning. Thunder rolled across the skies, and the wind howled through the trees surrounding the mansion. Deep within the shadows of the house, something stirred. Zack had returned. But the rain had triggered the part of his curse he dreaded the most. His body twisted and transformed, bones cracking and reshaping. Within seconds, the tall, handsome man was gone, replaced by a large, powerful bulldog with piercing blue eyes, still carrying a trace of the man within. This part of the curse was cruel. The rain always brought it, and the only way to break this part, the transformation during storms, was through S_X that it could undo the spell's grip completely. He needs to have sex with Amelia in his dog form, but the cost was great. He paced the hallway slowly, breathing heavily, claws tapping softly on the marble floor. His eyes turned toward Amelia's room, the only person who had ever shown him genuine care. He stopped at her door, hesitating, the inner battle raging inside him. Not tonight, he thought. She wasn't ready, and neither was he. Zack turned away, choosing the cold comfort of the mansion's east wing where no one would see him this way. As lightning flashed through the sky, the cursed beast lay in silence, waiting, longing and battling the storm within. "If you don't have sex with her tonight, you might die in a few days," a voice echoed. Standing above him was Lucas. "Remember, this is your last trial and the last opportunity for you to break this part of the curse." Lucas extended his hand. "Come, let's go to her. She will accept you." Reluctantly, Zack rose and followed him. They entered the mansion, their steps quiet but urgent, and headed straight to Amelia's room. Lucas knocked lightly on the door. Almost instantly, it opened. Amelia stood there, startled to see them. "Good evening," she greeted, eyes dropping in surprise at the sight of Zack in his beastly form. He didn't say a word, just stepped past her and into the room. She turned to follow him, but Lucas gently caught her arm. "My lady, may I speak with you for a moment?" Lucas asked. "Of course," she replied, glancing nervously toward Zach inside. Lucas took a breath. "Zach is in terrible pain. If you truly love him, I beg you to help him. This may sound strange, but to break this side of his curse, he must make love to you, while still in his beast form." Amelia's eyes widened, stunned. "What?" she whispered, barely believing what she was hearing. "Yes," Lucas said firmly. "Please, if you don't, he won't survive the next few days. This is the only way." Amelia turned her gaze towards Zach, who sat quietly, his eyes dim but filled with silent longing and torment. Her heart pounded. She had choices to make. Amelia looked frozen, her breath caught in her throat as her heart raced wildly. The rain outside battered the windows, thunder growling low like an omen. Lucas's words echoed in her ears. "If you truly love him, this is the only way." She turned her eyes slowly towards Zach. He was no longer pacing or growling, just sitting there quietly near the fireplace, his large beastly frame curled inward, almost as if trying to shield himself from the shame or the fear. Is he still conscious in there? Can he feel?" she asked softly, eyes locked on him. Lucas nodded solemnly. "He feels everything, thinks like himself. He just can't speak, but he sees you, he hears you, he loves you." A tear slid down her cheek. This wasn't how she imagined intimacy, not in her wildest dreams. But neither had she imagined loving a man trapped in such torment, a man who'd risked everything to protect her, to love her even through his suffering. She turned to Lucas, her voice trembling. "Will it hurt him?" "No," Lucas said gently. "It will heal him." Amelia nodded slowly, her fingers curling around the edge of her nightdress. "I need a moment with him, Amelia." Lucas bowed slightly, then stepped out and closed the door behind him. She approached Zach slowly, her bare feet silent against the floor. As she reached him, he raised his head. His golden eyes met hers, filled with sorrow, desperation, and something else. Hope. Amelia knelt before him, resting her hand on his thick, fur-covered shoulder. "Zach, if you can hear me, I don't understand everything, but I understand love. And I choose you, all of you." His head dipped, brushing gently against her arm. Her touch deepened, fingers running through his fur as she leaned in and whispered against his ear. "I'm not afraid of you, not anymore." Then, without waiting for permission from fate or fear, she led him to the bed, where love, sacrifice, and a broken curse were about to collide. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications so you're the first to know when part 2 drops. We're only scratching the surface of Amelia's ordeal, and you won't believe what happens next. Thank you for watching, and remember to keep the mystery alive. See you in the next part.